Did you know about what your chief of staff was doing with the alternate slates of electors? No, you're not. I can see your phone. I can see your screen.
That is Republican lawmaker Ron Johnson running away from reporters just so he doesn't have to answer any questions about some pretty incriminating stuff that came up during the recent January 6th hearing. Now, during that hearing, we were given some revelations about how his staffers were essentially trying to send Vice President Mike Pence a list of alternate electors to essentially steal the election on behalf of Donald Trump, okay? Now, it was Ron Johnson's staffers who tried to do that. So that's where it gets a little incriminating because it appears that Senator Ron Johnson tried to also fake a phone call in that video that you saw to avoid having to answer questions about it, which honestly implicates him, in my opinion, more in this issue. It's not like he had some lone staff member who decided to take matters into his own hands. But nonetheless, I wanna go to the next video because his attempt was busted by a DC reporter and he was forced to make stupid excuses. You're about to hear those stupid excuses right now.
Why was your chief of staff even offering this to the vice president?
Because it's a complete non-story. We've issued a statement, and it's a non-story. I don't know what you're even concerned about.
Well, they said that your chief of staff was saying that you offered, you wanted to provide alternate electors in Michigan and Wisconsin to Vice President Mike Pence.
This was a staff-to-staff exchange, and I was, basically unaware of it. And the chief of staff contacted the vice president's staff, said, "Do you want this?" They said no, and we didn't deliver it, and that's the end of the story.
But why was he even asking for that?
Because somebody delivered this to our office and asked to deliver that to vice president.
Did you support his efforts to try to get those slates to the vice president?
No, I had no knowledge of this.
So that staff member under a bus, right? Because he apparently acted unilaterally. Of course, I'm not buying that at all. And so these were the text messages that were shared during the January 6th hearing recently. It features text messages between the senator's chief of staff, Sean Riley, and former Mike Pence assistant, Chris Hodgson. So Riley says Johnson needs to hand something to Vice President Mike Pence, so V. POTUS, please advise. At that point, Pence's staffer says, "What is it?" Riley responds, "Alternate slate of electors for Michigan and Wisconsin because archivist doesn't receive them or didn't receive them." And at that point, the Pence staffer says, "Do not give that to him." Okay.
That's direct.
Just want to be clear though, Riley specifically said, this is an important part of this story, Johnson, meaning Senator Ron Johnson, needs to hand something to the vice president. Please advise. So, John, I don't know, maybe we're being a little too harsh with Ron Johnson, and maybe he's right. Why are you coming after me, reporters? Why are you asking me these questions?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel like stealing the election on behalf of Donald Trump with a slate of fake electors, pretty bad.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, you don't necessarily, in a situation where you're like following the senator, you don't have time to necessarily answer all of his questions, but the question, I don't even know why you're asking this. I'd just quickly be like, the fate of democracy is at stake. I don't know, it seems kind of important. You might be trying to make it. Oh, by the way, also, you saw in those text messages that he used the term alternate electors, which the reporter also used. Stop doing that. Why are you calling them alternate electors? They're not alternate electors. You know what an alternate elector is? Something that sounds legitimate.
Yeah.
These are not. These are fake electors at the very least, illegitimate electors, saboteur electors, something like that. They're not electors.
Yeah.
The electors are people who are chosen to fulfill what is supposed to be a purely ceremonial role in the presidential election. What you have is a bunch of partisan hacks you've chosen that have nothing to do with any of this, that you've put their names on a list because you think that prop somehow makes your quest to overturn the results of the election more legitimate. It does not. It is just a prop, that's all. So don't play into the framing of them. But Ron Johnson implied that it was just a staffer. At various points, he also said it was just an intern. And then when they turned it back around and said, this is your chief of staff, it's literally like if you're new to politics, you don't follow this, chief of staff is like the most important person that works for you. He then said, well, he had just come from the White House. It was his first day. Yeah, but you chose him. Don't be like, we haven't vetted him. He's your chief of staff. And as you pointed out, all of that is still just a cover because according to the text message, this was not a thing where it's like, hey, I've been hearing some buzz about this. It's Johnson needs to get this there.
Exactly.
The only thing that makes me question it a little bit is he said very clearly, I don't know anything about this. And there could be other text messages or other pieces of evidence that directly implicate him. He would look bad in the light of that. That doesn't necessarily stop them from lying, but sometimes they're careful. Lauren Boebert refuses to say whether or not she asked for a presidential pardon, so sometimes they try to be careful. But Ron Johnson definitely was involved in this. It was definitely illegitimate, and he knows that.
Ron Johnson was one of Donald Trump's top lapdogs, and Republican lawmakers and Republican administrations have gotten away with doing all sorts of terrible things, committing war crimes, for instance, with absolutely no consequences. So my take is when you have a climate in place, like a system in place that incessantly communicates to right-wingers and people in positions of power that there will be no consequences for their actions, it's a power grab, right? Let's just try it. Let's try it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not like we're gonna suffer any consequences for trying to steal the election on behalf of Trump and stay in power.
And they haven't,
Yeah, so I don't believe Ron Johnson at all, but nonetheless, he is really staying committed to this talking point that he has an unhinged staffer who just kind of decided to go out of his way without advising with him to do this. So here he is throwing that staffer under a bus yet again.
We got handed an envelope that was supposed to go to the vice president. I didn't know. So we called out the vice president. He didn't want it. We didn't deliver it. It's not a story, guys. This is such a non-story.
Was that the first you had heard of it when you received the envelope? And do you remember who gave it to you?
It was a staff-to-staff deal. I mean, it apparently had Michigan and Wisconsin. I had no hand in any of it. And again, this lasted a couple minutes in our office, and the episode is over. Again, this is a total non-story.
Are you going to ask your aides about who this person was? Have you asked?
We did know. Literally, don't. It was a staff-to-staff. Somebody from the House, some staff intern, said we got to. The vice president needs this or whatever. Again, I wasn't involved.
I'm just not buying it. You're right, it makes no sense. One final thing I want to say is, during the hearings, what's been coming out more and more, and I feel like no one's noticed it, it's kind of bothering me. Like Mike Pence, along with other Trump loyalists, didn't outright reject the idea of using these sham electors, right? They entertained it. They asked around about it. And what I thought was also interesting about this exchange was that, and look, it could be Pence's staffer speaking on behalf of Pence, but it is interesting that you need the staffer to run interference, right? To block the delivery of this list of sham electors to steal the election.
Yeah, I mean, presumably Senator Ron Johnson would have Pence's phone number if he wanted to directly contact him. It could be an effort to put some distance, which he's now doing, having his chief of staff do it and having him contact a staffer for the VP. But again, I mean, no part of this makes any sense. So if some random intern for a Republican representative, he implied it was someone from the House, came to your office with an envelope of electors, then okay, that's not on you. So then why did your chief of staff reach out to the VP about it? Since you didn't entertain it and it only lasted a few minutes, why did your chief of staff come out of that interaction believing that this is something he needs to directly contact the upper aides of the vice president for? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And let's say that did happen. Let's say that he's totally innocent, Ron Johnson didn't do anything about all of this, but because of the actions of some random intern, he has been implicated in a plot to overthrow democracy. How badly would you want to identify that person to clear your name?
Right, exactly, yes.
But he doesn't want to.
Yep.
He's not interested at all in identifying who that person is.
He's the homie.
Yeah, and look, I think that throwing interns under the bus for the things you do, we've criticized people in the past for doing that. It's pathetic. But you have to at least do it if you're gonna do it. You can't fake throw the anonymous, non-existent, the ghost intern under the bus. That doesn't actually work. And choose an excuse, honestly. I'm sure you've dealt with people who will provide multiple excuses for something that is much less credible than one good one. So he's got his intern and he's got, I wasn't in it, and also it only lasted a few minutes. What is that supposed to mean?
I know, it's amazing.
You try to use that to get out of other things people accuse you of.
I was robbing the bank, but I robbed the bank for just a few minutes.
I was in the vault for like a minute.
Did it quick.
Yeah, there's no 5-second rule of like coups. That doesn't work.
I know, it's amazing. I do want to read this comment from our members section. You can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, help keep us sustainable and free of any corporate influence. Strategic Diversity Dragon writes in and says, Johnson was supposed to personally give the documents to Pence. I am sure an intern does not determine whether Johnson delivers the mail. Yeah, it's excellent point. I mean, excellent points all around with you and John included. So we'll see what happens. And like, look, it has been illuminating. We're learning more about just how many terrible people are in the Republican Party who have no problem essentially dismantling our democracy, stealing elections, completely discounting the votes of tens of millions of Americans. At the end of the day, though, for this to really matter, all the people who have been implicated in this need to face and suffer consequences.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that Merrick Garland is like, and David Schuster said he could walk, he should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. But he went to Ukraine to talk about how the Justice Department will pursue war crime charges against Russia, which at the end of the day is like a symbolic thing, right? No, there are criminals within our government in America right now. File the criminal charges, what are you doing? I mean, it's just laughable, it is. And maybe he will, I don't know, but he hasn't yet.
Merrick Garland, when has he ever done anything?
It's really infuriating.